The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
Super.
Yeah, really? Is it like a manly sort of super,
Yeah.
or is it a kind of a more toned down?
It's themly. It's a themly sort of super. Super them.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So it could be a manly, it could be a womanly, it could be a girly, it could be a boyly.
Yeah. Yeah. I want anyone who wants
A
to be
dogly.
super. No,
No.
we're staying within the realm of what would generally be considered people.
I'm just saying, man. Like, there's cryptos off in the corner, just dog crying all over the place. Like it's Kryptonian tears, so they're basically like a water laser.
Are Superman's tears super?
I think maybe they could be, but he lives in a world made of cardboard. So he has to like actively make sure that, when he cries, it doesn't destroy the earth or whatever.
Doesn't he has in some versions of Superman, he has like a sonic, like, can he like shout like sonic volumes?
Yeah, I think he can. I do know one of the things he can do is he has Jimmy Olsen has the Call Superman watch, which emits a hypersonic sound, which he can hear
Through space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just do this. Let's not talk. Let's just talk about Superman. Like this, that would be more enjoyable. That'd be more fun, right?
That's fair, and also would fit better with the title of this episode because Superman is not found in this game.
What?
I mean, there's someone wearing a Superman costume, but the character Superman is not present in the game Superman 64.
That okay. All right, now I'm picking up what you're laying down. That is correct. Yes, but to be fair, in many imaginings of Superman, there is no Superman.
That's fair. That's fair. So we played Superman 64. Came out May 31st, 1999, which is, I assume, a day that will live in infamy. Let me talk about my Nostalgia Goggles experience for this. I know this game entirely through pop culture, right? Like, I actually didn't ever get to lay hands on this when it was new, and most people didn't because it was a critical failure, right? It was just like in the term, like, critics critiqued it as a failure, and also it rolled a natural one on all of its rolls, right? Just failures across the board. And I want to say this up front, just in case I get swept up in the moment and I say something I don't mean, and I'm sure that I speak for you as well. Everyone knows that this game is awful, and nothing that we are about to say is going to be contrary to that. And I don't think that anyone who worked on this game is proud of it or happy with it. I think some confluence of things happened. I don't know what those things are because I intentionally did not look them up, right? But I think some confluence of things, whether it was timing or budget or all of the developers were in a horrible bus accident and so it had to be finished by the janitor, like something happened that made this game get onto store shelves. And so everything we are about to say is about the thing that got onto the shelf, not any of the people who made it, because I refuse to accept that anyone who is a professional game developer was super proud of this, right? If you were like a solo developer who had never made a game before, this would be amazing, like as a freshman effort, right? It's like I made a 3D game all by myself and I shipped it to a Nintendo console. That would be incredible at this time in history because developer tools were not good. No professional was happy with this product existing on store shelves. So everything we're going to say that's bad, I assume you are talking about the game, not the people who made it.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing is that I don't think that this was anybody's like, labor of love project, right?
It's
Nothing
not
about
their
this.
magnum opus.
No, or like their last big hurrah in the games industry before they retired. You know, I mean,
God, I
like
hope
even
not.
if it was even if it was going to be that, you wouldn't go out on this note, right? You know, like it's you'd make at
Jonathan, you're
least
70 years old. You have to retire. No, not like this.
I mean, even if you just made like a 2D platformer that literally you jump one platform and then the game ends, you'd be like, okay, but that was my last game, you know?
now I can stop.
I also did not purchase this game. I also know it exclusively through pop culture, which is pretty wild because this came out in 1999, which would be when we were in high school, right? Within my core group of friends, we had we had a whole bunch of friends, but literally we had the Justice League, you know? So we had David, a friend of ours, he was our Aquaman, you know? We had Tara, she was our Wonder Woman. We had Frank, who was our Batman, and I was the Superman of the group, right? So I loved Superman. I thought he was awesome. And I loved the animated series. I thought it was awesome. So the fact that I didn't know that this game existed on a console that I owned, I think speaks to how good, like the place that the game had in history. I was 100% their target audience. You know, like I was the guy that they were making this game for. Like I checked all of the boxes, and I didn't even know it existed. Like that's not.
And
great.
Considering the age you were, doesn't it feel like you should have gotten this as like a present from an aunt or a grandparent at Christmas or something? Like, I can imagine that you would not have maybe known about this because gaming news and magazines and stuff, like, I don't know if you were in any of that crap, but for a distant uncle to be in a Walmart and not be like, oh crap, I got to send George a birthday present, and then see this and then ship it to you. Like, I'm almost more surprised that didn't happen.
Yeah, it just, again, this game is it is singular, right? And to kind of quote the pre-show a little bit, is that I didn't want to play this game. I wanted to have played it, right? You know, because this is one that I think that, like Jekyll and Hyde, where I wasn't, champing at the bit to get my hands around this really cerebral title. I wanted to, as a game reviewer, have played it and to have it in the library. So I didn't want to paint the deck. I wanted to paint a deck. So, yeah. Chill.
Yeah, let's do that. So okay. If you want to hear more about Superman 64, you can listen to the show by subscribing. You can make sure we continue making the show by leaving ratings and reviews in Apple Podcasts. You can get more people to listen to the show by doing that, and also just literally recommending it. You can request games for us to play through the feedback form on the website or through Twitter, because we're both on Twitter. This game, not a listener request. And if you really want to go crazy, I know, hard to believe, right?
Right.
If you really want to go crazy and go that extra mile, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us at any level on Patreon, you get access to the after show, which is bonus content that we release only to patrons of all levels. And if you support at a high enough level, we will shout you out on the show. So we want to thank our 8-bit classics, Kevin.
So real fast, I just want to let you know that this is information that was entrusted to me by our 8-bit classics and our 16-bit heroes. But I believe that in the context of this, they would be okay with me sharing this information. So Kevin, whose true identity is Green Lantern.
Jason.
The Flash.
Yarno.
Aquaman. Sorry, Yarno. Keep going.
And John.
The Martian Manhunter. That worked out really well, actually.
That one does work out really well.
Like, I'm just going in order, but that worked out.
Yeah. And then our 16-bit heroes, Jacob.
Batman.
Michael.
Wonder Woman.
And David.
Superman.
Yes! We both got a thing neither of us planned.
Woohoo! We did the thing.
All right, visuals. Okay, so here's the thing about the visuals in this game. No one looks at these visuals and says, "Oh wow, these visuals are great." But I gotta say, I don't think they are unusually bad for the Nintendo 64. The problem is, I think, what they tried to push that hardware to do. So I saw when I was looking up screenshots for this, because there's like little captions in Google Images. Someone had a caption on their image that was like Superman and the battle against draw distance, and I was like, yeah, that's fair, because everything just seemed it's like you're playing this game in Silent Hill instead of Metropolis. Like the draw distance is just feet. Like it's measured in a single digit number of feet, which makes it feel like you are on a little tiny island floating in a fog, and that's not cool when you're supposed to be in basically New York City. It's just
right.
It creates this weird sort of unbelievability to the horizon, and then everything up close is just flat and featureless. So if you look off into the distance, you see nothing. And if you look at what's up close to you, you see nothing, but sort of it has like the texture of a city mapped onto it. So like they could have set this game in any environment, and they chose to set it in Metropolis, which they didn't have the computing power to render in a believable way. So that's not the N64's fault, right? Like you didn't really do what the hardware was capable of. If you look at a game like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, those are rendered in environments where they could make it seem like believable. And this is just not that. Like they were trying to render it in GTA 5 so that you have this sprawling view of the Metropolis area, but you don't. Everything's just in like kind of a sky gray green fog.
Yeah, no, I agree. So first of all, visuals for sake of visuals. Well, sorry, actually, no. Let me touch on your point first. So yes, I agree. I do think that their eyes were bigger than their stomachs. Because what they wanted to do was to have almost like this like huge open world. And so they tried to say like, well, you're in a virtual reality world. And there's kryptonite fog or whatever thing that they did, right? And it's like that's fine, and it does give you some narrative reason as to why this is happening, but again, like the reason why it worked so well for Silent Hill was because Silent Hill was a horror game. Like this is if the core aesthetic here is fantasy, and the fantasy is being Superman, that is so far from horror. That is like literally the antithesis of horror, right? If horror is disempowerment in a safe space and action is empowerment, Superman is the most empowered superhero of all. Like that's kind of the point. So the fact that they were like, well, just kind of smoke screen it out. Yeah, I mean, you can do that, but to your point, right, is that there were video games that had not necessarily better draw distance, but where let me rephrase that. The draw distance was better because they chugged less stuff in it, right? But I feel like that what they did was they said like, well, we've got this huge city of Metropolis, but the thing is we can't render it all at once. We're just going to render these small bits and restrict the draw distance. And it's like, or what you could have done is created like sub levels. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like now you're in downtown, like this area of Metropolis. Now you're in this area of Metropolis, and then actually rendered it properly. And then that would have come off way better than what they did, which is creating an area that is theoretically large but feels small. The other thing that they did that blows my mind with this is that they created this huge city, right? And even with the fog, it could still feel like a huge city. If the main thing you weren't doing in this huge city was flying through hoops, right? And more importantly, flying through hoops or whatever task they have you doing, that has to be done super fast, right? So because of that, I spent no time like just taking in the city and flying around being Superman, because it's like, okay, fly through all these hoops. And so visually I've got like my blinders on and I'm just focused on going from hoop to hoop to hoop. I was playing for a solid hour before I realized that I'm actually, I'm in a city, and probably these areas I'm flying through are representative of different areas of the city. Look, like there's kind of this dock area, and oh, hey, look, I'm by a skyscraper right now. Who knew? I didn't, because everything they're doing is focusing on just go through these rings,
I think keeping the player's field of view conceptually narrow, as opposed to like literally having a narrow field of view in the viewport, is an excellent way to say, okay, well, the stuff that's over there is harder to render, so we either won't render it or it'll be like a 2D, like paste on to the background, so it's fine as long as you're not staring straight at it. But there are times in the first level, I guess, series of challenges where there's kind of nothing going on. And man, if you catch a glimpse of the horizon for a second, that glass is shattered forever. Because I actually had the exact same experience. I was so trying to master the controls and so trying to deal with jumping through hoops that I couldn't even look around and like appreciate the world, right? So once I noticed it, I was like, oh no. But it did admittedly take a minute. So I think maybe that is the effect they were going for, is like, oh, if you're dealing with crises and you have to save people and stop these bad guys and save these cops and get them to the end of the street or whatever stupid thing they make you do in that first level, like, then you're kind of really focused on the task at hand and you're not admiring the scenery. But you have to then keep the pace of the game so fast that the player never looks up at the horizon. Otherwise they're like, ugh, right? It's like, I think it was when we played Super Mario 64 and one of our listeners explained billboarding to me. And I was like, oh no, because now whenever I do play an N64 game, I am super aware of that, because if the action is not so fast paced that I am able to say that one's a JPEG, those over there are polygons, like then once you know, you know. But if the action is fast paced enough, or if you're focused enough on the task, then you don't like kind of fall into that pit. That being said about the environment, Superman looks like an idiot when he flies. I don't know what's up with the swimmy wide arms. The best I could come up with is he's trying to like get drag to help him turn. Like he sticks his arm out like a rudder. Like, I'm sure when we get to controls and mechanics, we both have a lot to say about, feeling like Superman in this game, but that seems like a really easy miss. Like, why did you make him stick his arms like out like that? Like he's a kid being held up by his parent going, wee! Right. Oh God, it looks so doofy.
It does. And so I think that we can agree that one of the core aesthetics that they're going for in this game is fantasy, right? The fantasy of being Superman, right? And the game that I'm going to consistently juxtapose this to, because one, I'm currently playing it, is and two, I think that it's a great corollary, is Spider-Man, the Spider-Man game, right? Is that fair? No, because that game was made for the PlayStation 4 and almost broke it. But it does make you feel like Spider-Man. It feels amazing, So yeah, I don't think that when you are wanting to be, so for example, when I was playing the Spider-Man game, right? Literally at one point, I'm web zipping around and I accidentally web zipped directly into a fire escape, right? And I was like, man, I screwed up, like my aim was off. And so instead of like hard hitting the fire escape and then just falling down and having to get up, dust myself off, he literally just tucked his arms together, put his feet through first, and like did like a corkscrew spin through the fire escape. And then I just came out the other side and lost no momentum. I'm like, I feel amazing. I am the Spider-Man. Like this is what they're going for, right? So can this game do that? No, it can't do anything close to that. But it cannot make me feel like a friggin' moron every second that I'm flying as Superman, which clearly they're hammering home as one of the core gameplay loops, right? Especially because what I think that they're trying to show to you is it's like, okay, they need to know when they're kind of hard banking to the left and to the right, right? For whatever reason, they think that that's information that is crucial to have, that you can't just determine, whatever. Here's the thing, man, is that Superman, like when he's flying, right, he has his two fists out, right? Superman is also renowned for doing the one fist chambered, other fist out. That's what it should look like. When you're banking hard to the right, you keep your right arm out and you chamber your other fist and you turn slightly to the right, just like he does. You wink to the camera, like just like he does in Superman, and then, and then you do it in the other direction when you need to, right? That's the animation. So why did they do this?
I don't.
Why?
I actually
want an answer.
I hadn't thought of that solution you just described. But I'm angry now because that was totally within their power. Like they absolutely had the technology to do that. Although you could argue like, well, but that's additional rigging and blah blah blah. But like, no, you had to rig the fish arms. Like, we're not talking about rigging an animation or no animation. We're talking about rigging the animation they chose versus rigging a much better animation.
Yes, way better animation, and one that's and again, this kind of comes back to what you said. It's like we're not harking on the people or anything like that, but it's like, have you ever watched Superman? Seen anything about Superman? Like, if you have any love for Superman, you have to have like even though you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. The minute I said it, you're like, oh, that's obviously the call, right? So literally, 2 fans of Superman in a room in under 15 minutes came up with a better solution than this. That means there had to be less than 2 fans of Superman in the room at all times when they were animating this, right?
I mean, yes, clearly. Okay, so I should have asked you this at the top. How far did you get in this mess?
Not very. I hit a hard skill wall. I mean, immediately, because we'll get into the tutorial and all that kind of stuff, but not very far.
Did you get to the second level?
I don't.
Did you get to an interior space?
No, I did not get to an interior space.
So there's each level is made up of a bunch of objectives, and so because there's checkpoints at them, if you fail, you go back to the checkpoint. It does feel like those are subsequent levels, but it's multiple objectives within the same level. And the reason I bring this up in visuals is the second level is in an interior space, and the flying controls for Superman are bad. The walking controls are somehow worse. And again, I bring this up in visuals because watching Superman aimlessly drift side to side as he power walks down a hallway is stupid looking. Like, it's exceptionally stupid looking. And in the first level, that's if you can picture this game, Superman flying through the hoops, like that's the very first level. And maybe some of the later levels are like that, but that's the very first level. In the second level, you're in this, like, I think you're in like the sewage control. It's like the waterways under Metropolis, and there's bombs. So you got to go get the bombs, but there's these little turrets. They're like little robots that have guns on them. And these are the first enemies you encounter in the game that are capable of like hurting you at all. The whole first level, there's really no enemies at all. And when you take a shot from one of these, I guess because of the kryptonite cloud or whatever dumbassery you just described a minute ago, you double over in agony like you are about to throw up. Like he wrenches forward like someone just smashed him in the gut. And that animation does not make you feel like Superman. It's like, man, he looks really hurt. And this is just like a regular ass enemy. Like, what am I going to look like fighting bosses that have like superpowers or super technology or whatever, kryptonite weapons? Like, ugh.
Yeah. No, it's and again, that's the thing is if they're trying to deliver on the empowerment of Superman, it's a complete and total failure. One thing I do want to say on an upside for visuals, for the sake of visuals, is, and feel free to rebut me on this one, is that the model for Superman and Lex Luthor and Lois Lane and all that, not bad. I'm actually with you. In fact, I think Lex Luthor and Lois Lane have better faces than Superman because you're usually seeing him from the back. But yeah, they look, if you remember the Justice League and Superman cartoon from the 90s, like, yeah, pretty spot on, actually. Right. And that was the thing is it because of the source material that they were mimicking, it's kind of ready for, low poly 3D, right? It's because all of those cartoons are not they're not, Dragon Ball Super, right? They're not, Rurouni
they're not
Kenshin.
Miyazaki films.
Yeah, they're very, very simply animated, and so thus it lends itself to simple animation. So I knew that this game was trash, right? But when I loaded it up, I was like, Lex Luthor doesn't look too bad. Superman doesn't look too bad. Oh no! And then it just, but I did, credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
That the whoever did the modeling for like the way Superman just looks as a 3D model, good job. Whoever then animated him moving in any way, like just terrible.
We're shocked. They also nailed the font, that like 1920s Art Deco Hollywood. It's the same kind of font they use in like all the BioShock games, the tall, skinny letters.
Yeah. So I'm just no, it's great. That is, I believe, the first time we've ever mentioned the font choice on this show. So okay, that's got to be the great personality of game visuals, right?
You're right. The fact that it bears mentioning is not awesome. I think it does bear mentioning because this is the kind of thing that in a game that obviously had to cut a lot of corners for some serious like production studio reasons, probably either money or time or both. The fact that somebody took the time to draw that out, because they had to make the font and put it into the N64 and then be able to write out all the menus in it. Like, if you were the whip cracking, I don't care, get this shovelware onto the shelf, which I don't think is what happened here. I don't think this is a shovelware licensed IP game. I think this is some other more complicated catastrophic failure. But I can absolutely imagine, the boss man walking down the hall and just being like, Johansson, what are you doing? Well, it's that Art Deco font. I have to render it because that's, it's like how all the signs are on the Daily Planet, and like that's what people expect. It's in the cartoon. Like, no, just slap Times New Roman in there and get on to the next thing, right? Like, so
move along.
I agree that it comes across as damning praise, but it shows it's that little like, this isn't from lack of effort, it's some other cause, right? Because otherwise, if they were just being lazy, they would not have bothered to do that.
Yeah, Megan actually mentioned that this might be a Die Hard 2 situation where, like, she said that they just have a flight simulator game and then they said, make it into a Superman game. But anyways, so one other upside that I will say for visuals is that they do a good job. It's so hard to not sound snarky. They do a good job showing you which ring you need to fly through, right? So there's a whole bunch of rings in order.
That is snarky.
Yeah, I'm just saying though, right? Is that, the ring you're supposed to, so once you fly through one of the rings, the next ring like lights up and starts spinning. So you're like, that's the ring they need to fly through. It matters when they have you sometimes like banking hard left or hard right, because then I would look and say like, wait, that's not the next ring. Oh, wait, this is. It matters because they clearly expect for you to be going at 1,000,000 miles an hour while you're doing that, but we'll save that for mechanics. But I did think that was a plus. And
I do have bad news. That clarity about where to go next goes right in the garbage as soon as you get to the interior space, because that mechanic is entirely linked to the rings. So like the little compass, the rings changing color. Once you go into the interior space, they don't tell you where you're supposed to go at all. There's no visual indicator of get this, go here, do that. You get the little on-screen text that's like, here's what the theme of this level is. Like you get at the beginning of the first level. But yeah, that little compass, that very helpful little go this general direction compass, yeah, it's gone.
Bummer. Huge bummer. The one other thing that I wanted to make sure that, well, two things. One throwaway note. The other big thing I want to mention for visuals is, okay, you can miss 2 rings when you're flying through the rings, sometimes 3. I don't know whether it's like X number of rings in quick succession, X number of rings over a certain period. I don't know, right? The reason why I don't know that is because it's relayed to you in no way whatsoever, right? So you have there. so they commit one of the cardinal sins, which is they have crap on your UI, on your HUD that does not need to be there, right? If you can't take damage, you don't need to see your health bar, right? Especially if it's in no way like, I mean, like I'm flying through hoops, right? So show me when I miss one, take a huge hit to health, because then I'll know. Oh, but I had to keep mental track of how many rings I had missed, especially because if you do miss one, doubling back and like snagging it will almost certainly fail you, so you need to know whether or not you can just say, I'll get that, don't even worry about it, you just move on to the next one. So the fact that they had a health bar that is in the entirety of the first level completely meaningless is dumb. It's just careless and frustrating, and it irritated me, and so I'm talking about it.
and I feel like you almost don't even know what it's for, since nothing in the first level can deal you damage, and there are lots of ways to fail, and none of them are related to health. So it's like, is this how long I can fly? Is this the number of good deeds I've done? Like, yeah, like you have no idea. I mean, you assume it's health if you understand how most video games are designed, but there's nothing that very quickly confirms that this is health by either hurting you or restoring it or anything. Yeah, you have the one and only thing in your HUD is seemingly useless for the entire first level.
Yes. And this is so frustrating, dumb, and it's fine, but like, it's just the entire health bar is just like red to orange, right? Which is fine. For me personally, I would have preferred a red to blue. I think that would have been cooler and more on theme, whatever. The one other throwaway note I had is that, again, in a game where it's about you being Superman, your flying looks like hell, and your punching looks like you are having a seizure. It's just awful. It doesn't work well. It doesn't connect well. When you start punching, it doesn't look like Superman, planting his feet, gritting his teeth, and eating that horse, right? It doesn't look like that. It looks like my son, my 5-year-old, when he's decided to use his self-proclaimed Carolina Smash on me.
Does he really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he calls out Carolina Smash. And actually it's funny because my 3-year-old also does it. And so when I'm attacking the 5-year-old, he will yell out, "Lizzie, use Carolina Smash!" And then she'll come running in and she'll go, "Carolina Smash!" and like hit me, and then I'll fall over. It's a lot of fun.
I can't decide if that sounds more like a drink or a sandwich.
I actually saw a thing recently where it was they had a wrestler from like the WWE and come to their office, and they were like, "Is it a mixed drink or a wrestling move?" And they quizzed all the people from the office, and if you got it right, then you got to drink the mixed drink, and if you got it wrong, the wrestler performed the wrestling move on you.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good. But anyway, so yeah, again, just the animation, all of the animations for Superman in no way made me feel like Superman.
The only other comment I have about the visuals is the hitbox is attempting to assist you, and we'll probably pick this apart a little bit more in controls and mechanics. So all I will say here is the hitbox is bad. You connect with things that you don't think you should have connected with. You don't connect with things you think you should not have connected with. Like it's all over the goddamn place. If you have nothing else for visuals, I actually have a tie-in to one of your last comments about audio. So,
I have nothing more for visuals.
I have nothing more to say. So the rings, when you fly through them or don't, and then you go through a subsequent ring. So like, say there's 3 rings in a row. You fly through ring 1, and then you miss ring 2, and then you fly through ring 3. It makes like you got electrocuted sort of noise, like a bzzz kind of noise.
Yep.
And
there's no visual associated with it, but it does make that noise. Yeah.
Zero visual associated with it, which is why I think it's interesting that you pointed out, like, oh, you don't actually know that you missed a ring unless you hear that sound or you just fail, which means if you don't associate an electricity noise with missing a magical floating hula hoop, which is reasonable that someone might not think that those two things go together.
I don't know, but my parents were pretty insistent that I know how to fly through magical hula hoops, and they did shock me when I screwed it up.
Yeah, but then you knew the noise was coming from the cattle prod.
Yeah, I hear it like ramping up.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, it's not unreasonable that someone could not understand exactly why they're failing, because there's a giant timer on the screen. And if you run out of time, then obviously you fail the challenge. The maze, as Lex Luthor calls it. But it's not immediately obvious that you have to hit every single hoop. Again, unless you happen to notice the subtle coloring change, which I think is clear enough to be useful, or you just vaguely understand, oh, presumably they want me to fly through the center of each ring, right? This is expensive, stupid licensed IP pilot wings, and I have to fly through each ring, right? So it's like, will you eventually put it together? Yes. Would you expect most people who play this game to eventually put it together? Sure. Does the game do anything to help you put that together? Not really. And I think this audio choice is actually working against that, right? If it even just made like a cartoony, like, right? Like you missed one, right? You got a wrong answer on a quiz show kind of buzzer noise. I think that would communicate better. Hey, you have to fly through each hoop, right? When the game loads, the first hoop is directly in front of you. So assuming you understand how the controls work, which you probably don't, we'll get to that. Then you fly forward and you fly through the first hoop, and it should go like bing. And then if you miss a hoop and you fly through the next hoop, it should go right. Something super clear, because the visual helps you understand which one is next. And I think the noise would help you understand if you got one or you missed one or something, right? But the electric, no, God, why?
Yeah, no. I think that they were trying to do something diegetic, where it was like, oh, you missed a ring, so you got electrocuted, but it does not come off that way at all.
You missed a ring, so we electrocuted Jimmy Olsen.
But it's always Jimmy, you know?
Yeah,
like
no,
it's
you
never
can't torture Lois Lane. That's not how any of that works.
No. So this is, I don't know when a good place to shoehorn this in is. Probably not in audio, but whatever. Probably in controls mechanics. But what bothers me so much is that like there's just so many better ways to have done this. Because when we were talking about like the flying through hoops, where it's like, oh well, you just have to know to fly through hoops. I do think that that's something that we as humans kind of know. But what it made me think of is it's like, you know, another game where you had to fly through hoops sometimes and was super fun. Star Fox 64, man. The game was a blast, you know? And then it just made me think, because I was like, what Star Fox 64 did that this game could have just done, man. They could have just ripped this stuff wholesale. It's like, what if there were just like in this, where there's like flying portions of the level, just make Superman fly nonstop. And then what if, I mean, literally, if you took Star Fox 64 and just swapped out the R-Wing with Superman, and it's his heat vision, you know, like that could have been cool. But anyways, that's
but then it wouldn't be Lex Luthor's maze. It's a maze, George. A series of rings you have to pass through in an order that the rings communicate to you. That's a maze.
Yeah, I just to make the headcanon a little bit more interesting, my thought isn't that Lex Luthor's a moron and doesn't know how to put together a maze. That's how highly he thinks of Superman. You know? That's his critique on Superman's intelligence, right? He's like, solve my maze, Superman. You're doing great, champ.
I got it off the back of a McDonald's menu.
Well, it's like the whole like Superman's a critique, or Clark Kent's a critique on humanity, right? It's that. So just credit where credit's due. I like what little of it I got to hear, the voice lines. Those were good, you know, like I forget what he says, but whatever Lex Luthor says at the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, that voice was hot.
It's some like you will soon meet your demise. It's a threat.
Yeah. So when threat.jpg is played like that was good. And then Superman, I mean, like the lead in is just so great, because he's like, you know, soon you will understand, Superman. I was like, oh yeah. And then it's like Superman saying, there's no time to lose. I was like, oh yeah. It was just all down the hill from there. But that being said, is that the voice lines, which I assume they did rip wholesale from the TV show. I don't think that they got voice actors for this, you know?
Honestly, the voice actor for Lex Luthor didn't sound exactly right to me. I mean, granted, I haven't seen the cartoon in a long time. The voice actor for Superman is either ripped wholesale or they got maybe the same guy, because that one actually sounded pretty much how I remember it. Lex Luthor one didn't, which is fine. I still think wherever that voice came from, it's a fine choice for those little sound bits. But yeah, it is it's like strong start and then just immediate fall flat on the face.
Yeah. It's oh, you know what it is? It's what was his name from one of the new Rick and Morty episodes? Like Blazin. It's Blazin. You know? It's like, oh man, he didn't even buy us any time, Morty. So that the music, it's fine. The problem is every time you start a level, the music starts over, right? Mario does this kind of stuff. Lots of places do it. And we'll get into this more in controls and mechanics. The number of times you are forced to restart abruptly from a checkpoint is high.
Many times.
So many times. And so listening to this song, the first 10 seconds of it over and over and over and over and over again, I hated it. I hated the music, man. It's one of those things, because the music, most of the time I'd be like, oh yeah, music was fine. It was innocuous, right? And it was, but it was grinding because of the amount of times I had to listen to it, the same exact song on a loop.
So I didn't have that problem for as long as you probably did, because once I realized that it is impossible to make the turns they're asking you to make without using the brake, because you fly like you're driving, right? So you have an accelerator and a brake, and you don't,
just like Superman. Yeah.
Just like Superman. You don't fall out of the sky like a plane would, but you can come to basically an instant halt, which is kind of neat, right? You don't slow down. And the reason that's relevant is because I actually got decent-ish enough at the flying that I was able to get through the first level and then get into the second level, which has different music and is different. Here's the issue. No matter how good you are at the first level, at each of the checkpoints, it also restarts the music. So you're going to hear it awkwardly restart like 5 or 6 times in the first level, even if you do everything exactly right on the very first try, which is not a great experience. And all of the times I failed. So like, it's super repetitive. My problem with the music was, okay, what game did we just play recently where you were talking about the John Williams Superman theme? It was something recent.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about.
Go back, listen to all of our episodes and let us know which one chronologically, and start at the beginning. I think it's fair.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. You don't want them to miss it.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how iconic the John Williams Superman music is. And it's John Williams, so it's definitionally iconic. I don't think the only Superman music that's ever been good is the John Williams music, but the cartoon absolutely is aping that kind of Superman music, right? It's very orchestral, it's very big and bombastic, and Superman music usually is, because it's like bright horns and it's him coming to save the day, right? So to have this music, which is a poor imitation of the cartoon music, which is a decent imitation of the John Williams music, or like an homage and inspired by, whatever the accurate term is, you're still another degree removed, and on lower fidelity hardware, and on a probably a way tighter budget, and right? So you end up with something that it's like, yes, okay, obviously this is trying to be a sweeping orchestral score, but they couldn't get the exact music from the cartoon. And maybe that's just because they literally couldn't translate it. Maybe they had the rights, but they couldn't translate it into a way the N64 could produce. And that itself is an homage or a copy of the John Williams Superman music. So you end up with like if someone gives you an article to read and you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, did you photocopy this? And they're like, no, I photocopied a photocopy from the library. And it's like, I'm not going to be able to read this. Like, this is not pleasant. It's that for sound, right? It's copy of a copy of a copy. It just doesn't, it's not bad. It's actually perfectly fine. It's just your brain is like, have I heard this song before? Because it's trying to hear the John Williams music or the music from the cartoon, and it's not that. And so you're constantly trying to like pattern match for this thing that it's never quite gonna fit, right? It's trying to get a block that's just a little bit too big into, you know, the bucket. And you're like, it should fit though, right? It's the same shape. And it's like, it's the same shape-ish.
Yeah, agreed on all fronts. And I think too, the last thing I'll say about audio is that we recently played Doom 2016. And that was a better game. But one of the things that we praised Doom about, and we one of the things I remember that we said was that basically it's a machine going. Doom 2016 is a machine going at like 100,000 RPMs, right? And a single grain of sand would just screw it all up, right? And one of the things that we had talked about was the fact that, you know, the music, right, that amazing rock, heart-pounding rock music, right? Like when you do a glory kill, it does like this sick guitar riff, you know, and then like when you kill the last bad guy, it does like this kind of ending riff and then ends, right? So the music always comes in organically and goes out organically, and it feels very, very smooth, right? This is what it feels like when they don't do that, right? When all of a sudden the music doesn't have like a nice lead in or cut out or anything. It just hard starts and hard stops. This is what that feels like. And like, can you imagine this in Doom 2016? It would have been unacceptable, you know? So it is wild the degree to which this is stuff like this, and this is going to feel a bit of field and philosophical, is why I get so frustrated when people are like, oh, well, I you know, the people who consider themselves to be Renaissance humans, you know, where they're like, oh, well, you know, I dabble in this, and I dabble in that. It's like, no, there is everything. All subject matters are now too deep for any novice to realistically claim to be an expert in multiple things. Like you mean like an expert in like 1 to 3 things, and then that's it. You're a novice in everything else, right? So because if somebody said, yeah, I mean, I dabble a little bit in music, like I can play the guitar, I could probably create a video game soundtrack. It's like, no, you can't, because it's going to sound like garbage because you don't even know how to fade it in, how to fade it out, when to fade it in, like what types of musical riffs can you do? And all of that is happening all the time under the hoods in like all of our games that we play these days, and we don't notice it, but we notice it when it's not happening, and it's not happening here.
Yeah. Well, and to your exact point is, to make that happen, not only did the technology have to get better, but it's very unlikely that that's ever done by a single musician, right? Maybe one person composes the music and then another person balances it, and then another person syncs it up with the game engine so that it comes in and out gracefully, right? Because then that person might have to go back to the composer and be like, I need you to make this phrase a little bit more repetitive so that we have more flexibility in where it fades in and out, right? So that it sounds more seamless. It's very unlikely that any one person, no matter how talented, is going to be great at all of those things, plus do the sound effects, plus do all the voice acting, plus do all the Foley. Like modern games, and I count this among them, right? Like we're talking games that have sophisticated soundtracks and can have sophisticated voice acting. Like you need a team, right? And this music is just, it's either playing or they hit like the track skip button to start the song over, and then it just immediately starts over, and it's just, it's not good. I do want to mention about the sound effects, just so I don't forget. They're bad in a way that is really annoying, because when you are flying and you do that hard bank with your stupid swimmy arms, it goes whoosh. And then when you bank back the other way, because, you know, the maze is get tighter and tighter, and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And it's like, could you not have had 2 whoosh noises and just randomly pick between them so that it doesn't feel like you're just pressing the whoosh button over and over again? Because there's one whoosh sound effect. And then there are other things that, because you are Superman and you would expect everything you do to be happening at Superman scale, you would expect those things to have some sound effects, and they don't. When you're doing your ridiculous flailing punches, you would expect like a whoosh, 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 whoosh. And then maybe when you collide with something, it's like bam, 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 right? Something, and there's nothing. It's just completely silent. You don't have access to all of your superpowers right when the game starts, despite the fact that pressing buttons will show you the menu for them. It's very confusing. But in the course of the first level, you get the super breath, and you have to use it to blow away these insane tornadoes that looks completely stupid. And it goes like, blow, right? It's this pathetic little wimpy nothing, right? It should sound like a hurricane, right? Like it's super, like the fact that the sounds are either repetitive to the point of being like an Atari game or completely absent, like literally nothing, is just bizarre. It's, oh my God. This game is Bizarro Superman 64. Like, this is a great Superman game in the Bizarro universe because they hate Superman. It's like, this is their favorite Superman game.
Interesting. I'll have to chew on that for a second. I like where you're going.
Yeah, I don't think that'll hold up to scrutiny. It's just because I said the word bizarre, I was like,
Bizarro. So I want to take a quick aside and kind of mention one of my favorite Superman moments, because there's a bunch of good ones, but there was one where, like, and I forget the context exactly, but basically there were these like eldritch elementals that were pissed off with Superman, and so he's fighting like basically a water elemental the size of a skyscraper, right? And there's a fire elemental and an earth elemental. They're all giving Superman the business, and they were like, you need to leave, foreigner. Like, you're a foreigner on Earth and you need to leave, right? And I forget why he precipitated this exact response. It was something to the effect of, if you continue to try to kill me, I will use my heat vision to boil away your oceans. I will breathe away your atmosphere, and I will tear the Earth asunder, and then I will find a new home as a foreigner. And it's like, yeah, that's what that sounds like. That's not what that sounds like.
That is cool.
Just, like, it's just,
yeah, that is a cool scene though. But his super breath does not sound like it would blow away the atmosphere.
That's what I'm saying, right? It sounds closer to like the when Jerry gets ousted from the house, and like you hear the like that. That's what it sounds like, Yeah. So not great.
I don't think I have anything else to say about the audio, honestly. Like it's just what other audio I heard in the second level is mostly just unremarkable computery and robot-y beeps and boops.
Yeah. Controls and mechanics. Let's talk a little bit about the tutorial. There is no tutorial.
Oh, okay, good. I was afraid you actually had played a completely separate game that, respected your time and thought that you might need to be taught how to play this game.
Well, you said that this is the Bizarro Superman game, so there is a great tutorial. I love tutorial. Oh man, you see that's what we should have done is we should have like done the whole episode as a Bizarro episode. It would have taken so much time and planning, which this game does not deserve, but to like take everything we would have said and then flipped it,
Yeah. That would be an interesting like art project to try and have consistency in the things you say. Like say all the correct things about the game, but as if they were positive. Like we'd have to script that. Like, I'm not saying it wouldn't be an interesting project, but it would be hard.
It would. That's what I'm saying. Like, it would be I don't think either of us has the time to do that, but literally if we could take the transcript of this episode and then go back through and then bizarro every phrase, like it would be I want to have that. I don't want to do it. So
there you go.
That's
Yeah.
brought it together.
To your point about the tutorial, I literally have as my first bullet for controls and mechanics, is this the worst level 1 we've ever seen?
I would say, I mean, maybe Jekyll and Hyde is on par, you know? I mean, maybe Home Alone 2. I mean, like that's where it's at, right? You know, it's literally now has taken its place in the exemplars that we use. You know, like anybody who listens to the podcast knows that Home Alone 2 is the exemplar for cannot tell background from foreground, right? You know, it's up there, man. It's so jarring because basically it's like, you know, Superman says there's no time to lose, and then there's a bunch of rings. I'm like, oh, I got to fly through these. Okay, and I flew through them, and you know, was doing actually pretty decently given, you know, the controls are sloppy and all that sort of stuff. And then I ran out of time and it said like, haha, you're out of time. And I was like, did I just die on the tutorial? All right, hang on. And so I focused and I knew exactly what to hit, like right off the bat. And I did it again and I failed again. And because you're flying through hoops, I failed in such a way that I couldn't see the end goal. And I thought I was doing pretty decently. And I'm like, I am old enough and games literate enough that I should not be I shouldn't struggle on any tutorial this simple, you know? But it just, I mean, you basically have to have mastered flying before they'll let you out of that very, very, very first thing. And they don't say, press B to do this. They don't tell you, you know, hey, here's hints on how to move forward, how to brake, how to like tricks on how to sign. None of it. It's just, here you go, figure it out, champ.
Well, and we in a lot of our episodes, I think we reasonably assume that the listeners either have played the game or are familiar enough with the game that they understand what we're talking about. I want to take a second to really clearly spell this out, just so nobody thinks we're like glossing over anything, right? So the game boots up. You get to the title screen where you can load if you have, and for some reason it won't save to the cartridge. You have to save to a pack. That's so dumb. But like, so you can save and load and you can start a new game. If you start a new game, it goes to like a 5-second cutscene of Lex Luthor throwing Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen into the virtual reality dimension. And then
Perry White too.
Whatever. And then you have to go in and and then you have to presumably go in and save them, right?
Yeah.
But you don't actually see that. You just literally, they get sucked in through this big, like, you know, Stargate Atlantis looking portal. And then then it smash cuts to you floating. You're already in the air. And there's the rings in front of you and a building. And the rings kind of go off to one side. And then Superman says his opening line, right? Then there's no time to waste or whatever. The text on screen says, if you want to save your friends, you have to solve my maze, I think is what it says. And then as soon as you advance past that text, the timer starts. That's it. All you have done is say, I would like to play this game. And it goes, you have 90 seconds until you die, right? Like that's hostile. That is so hostile. Like, and the controls, because not only is the N64 controller the dumbest controller ever made, but the control, I did not guess fly him like a car, right? So I was not looking for an accelerator or a brake. I was just pressing on the stick and then just impotently floundering around in place. Like it is so, the first 10 seconds of this game do more to ruin the illusion that you are Superman than I think the entire rest of the game needs to even bother to do. And it's a joke. Like, I know Video Game Donkey makes this joke all the time. Like, it makes you feel like Batman, makes you feel like Spider-Man. I get that. I know that it's like corny to say that. But what I realized playing this is The opposite is actually the truth. Playing a Batman game where you feel like Batman is the expectation. That's not something you should praise a Batman game for. Playing Spider-Man and feeling like when you had that moment where you zipped through the fire escape, that's the expectation. The expectation is, well, duh, I'm Spider-Man. Of course I didn't decapitate myself on that fire escape or come to an immediate grinding halt, because that's not what Spider-Man would do, and I'm Spider-Man. Doesn't matter that it's a pre-programmed animation that you had nothing to do with. It made you feel good, and that's the point of playing the game, right? To enjoy playing the game. This game does not make you feel like Superman. And the fact that in the first couple of seconds after I have started a new game, I am confused, I am panicked, I don't know what to do, I am seconds away from losing. Like, I assume Superman does not feel that way all the time. I don't think that he wakes up every morning and is like, oh God, what am I doing? Where do I go?
So I'm going to take this moment to do another quick Superman story aside of one of my favorite moments in a Superman comic. Is basically, long story short, in one of the previous comics, this is a Batman Superman thing. So Batman and Superman are like talking. And what had happened was that there was an issue that had gone wrong and on a movie set, and the director had actually gotten a real piece of kryptonite to use in his movie because he wanted it to be authentic. Because of that, Superman was, depowered and almost got his lunch eaten in the middle of, in the middle of this exchange, right? And so Superman goes to Batman and says, look, man, we got to round up all the kryptonite because I can't do my job if there's just kryptonite laying around, I mean, like, could you imagine, like, if all of a sudden, there was like this thing that could just kill you, and Batman says, like, yeah, I've got that. It's called lead. Like, people shoot at me all the time. Like, every day I go in and do my job knowing I could die. But just to frame to your point, no, that's not how Superman feels. Like, he is so divorced from ever being in any real danger that the one time he was like, and now all of the kryptonite in the world has to go. Like, that was his proportionate response to that feeling, right? So no, you shouldn't feel that way. You should, again, like, the way I would picture it, right, is that, I get thrown into the game as Superman, and the very first thing that I should have to do is, like, there should be a car full of bank robbers just coming at me, right? And then literally they should just hit me and the car crumples, because that would give me some time to start playing around with mechanics and all that sort of stuff. But basically, the first level should be everybody running into me, the brick wall, while I kind of figure out how to deal with the, okay, I press B to do this, I do this, I do this. And then the end goal is like, stop the bank robbers, right? But they can't hurt me. So it doesn't matter how long I dink around with the controls to figure it out. It doesn't matter. One other cool thing that happens in Spider-Man to make you feel like Spider-Man is that literally sometimes there'll be an NPC. If you're just like standing on the ground, which doesn't happen very regularly because you're Spider-Man, they'll walk up to you, and if you hit triangle, they post up for a high five because they love you, Spidey. But right, but it's just like little stuff like that where they're like, "Hey, yeah," and you like high five them. You're like, "Yeah, I'm Spider-Man. That's cool. I'm cool. People like me." So this game did not do that.
It does not do that. So I mentioned that the flying looks and feels incredibly awkward. Something that, again, there are places of faint praise for this game. Something that they actually did that I thought was surprisingly thoughtful is in the first series of challenges, like throughout the first level, you're kind of flying always, right? It's very rare that you put your feet down or even have to put your feet down. And I think there's like 2 challenges where you may land, but most of the time you're up in the air. So you're learning the flying controls, and they're kind of awkward. But if you put your feet down, and this happens, there's more opportunities for this to happen in the second level and possibly beyond, because I only got to the second level. You can walk off of a ledge, and if you do that, you only fall for like half a second, and then you just immediately start flying, and it switches to the flying controls. And I was like, all right, like that's, yes,
I like that.
Because Superman can't fall, right? He would catch himself in the air the way you or I or anybody else would catch themselves on the ground, or they would put their hand out and brace against a wall or whatever. So like, I thought that was, and the fact that it actually switches modes, right? It's not that the model just stops falling. He actually switches from the standing chest out Superman kind of posture to the floating Superman posture, the control switch, it's actually kind of thoughtful. Unfortunately, that thoughtfulness immediately backfires because when you get further into the first level and you're kind of flying like through the like water runoff, the built up, man-made river channel or whatever. Sometimes you connect with those kind of slanted walls because the little path of rings starts to get tighter and tighter. And if you do, sometimes because the hitbox and the collision detection is so bad, Superman decides he's standing. And then sometimes he starts to fall because there's nothing to stand on. And then every time that happens, you get stuck in a loop because you fall for like a half a second before you switch to flying, which means you fall a little and then you start flying and then you collide with the wall, which makes you try to stand on it. And then you fall a little and you just get trapped and just impotently slide down this polygon, often into water, which is even more embarrassing. You just like, it's like the world's most embarrassing dunk tank. And it's like,
don't take a failure.
Right. That's the level of sadness you're dealing with. Is they thought, well, Superman can't fall. Superman can't fall. Like that doesn't even make any damn sense. But then the way it's actually implemented ends up being worse than if you just fell out of the sky and had to press a button to switch back into flying mode. Cause at least then I would be in control.
Right. Yeah, no, that's, again, just, it's a bummer that the few places where the game could potentially shine, doesn't. There's no failure spectrum in this game. Reasonably outside of like getting, yes, you do have a health bar.
It's a single shade of gray, right? It's everything's going great. There's a single shade of gray and then failure.
Right. I mean, and technically, like, you do have a health bar, right? So when the bad guys are shooting at you, that is a failure spectrum. But...
They kill you faster than would seem reasonable for Superman. So
right. Because it's Superman. And that was the thing that I always loved, like, for instance, in the Arkham Asylum games, was that Batman, when, bad guys are trying to wail on him with their fists and with their crowbars, you can take a lot of punishment. If somebody starts shooting at you, you need to get out of there because you're Batman. If somebody has, if a thug has like a line of sight and a gun on you, you have already not Batman, because he never should have seen you in the first place, that kind of stuff. Right. But Superman should not have that problem. Right. So, and I think that's kind of the thing is that, for Superman, it feels like that there should be certainly at least some failure spectrum, right? Like some kind of like, oh, hey, I've started to make mistakes, make errors, and now they're starting to accumulate and become a problem that now I, Superman, am even struggling with. But the fact is, like, for example, you accidentally landed on the side of this thing, and now that has cost you 3 precious seconds, which means you will now not finish this challenge in time, which means that you burnt. And then the fact that there's no, it just all of a sudden it's just you failed, and then it just immediately punts you back to now do it again, and you're like, whoa, God, I didn't even have time to scratch my nose, man. And that's normally I would praise something like that because any animations and things like that would increase the cycle time, right? And you know how I feel about cycle time, which I'll discuss later, right? But in this case, it's truly jarring because, you'll be sitting there flying along and all of a sudden it's like, you failed. Now try again. And you're like, oh my God, well, what happened? Especially, I remember this because, I failed 2 or 3 times on that first set of rings, but then I finally did it. And I was like, all righty, I did it. And I take a quick breath and it's like, okay, cool. Now stop these cars from hitting pedestrians. Go, 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 go. And then
6 seconds. 6 seconds. You have to internalize what they're asking you to do, get your lay of the land, and execute.
Correct. And then if you don't, then it is a blanket failure. You have just failed, and it doesn't even make sense with the premise. Now I'm just kind of frustratingly rambling, but it doesn't even make sense with the premise because and again, like, so with Mario, it's very gamey, right? You fall down a pit, you die, whatever. And there's a bunch of like people who are like, oh no, that's where the booze come from, which I think is fascinating, right? But in most of them, it's like, okay, you're not the version of you that failed. Whenever you like fail and get a game over, it's like, well, that's not you. You played through the successful route, right? But when you failed this many times, you're like, what's actually happening? Because if Lex Luthor just wanted to murder me, then why didn't he just murder me? Like, if the idea is that I failed to solve his maze, did I die? Or like, what is the ramification of that failure state? Because Lex Luthor is making this so difficult that he might as well just do it. You know, there's no struggle. He is God in absolute control. And if he's just toying with me, then why is he he's doing a bad job toying with me, because he's just creating impossible situations, you know, like anyway.
And I mean, that's the collision of narrative and mechanics, right? Because there are lots of arcade
narrative
games.
Dissonance.
Yes, right. There are lots of arcade games that are just hard, but you don't feel like it's stupid. You may not enjoy that kind of game, but a person is unlikely to just say, oh, this is stupid, because it's just, can you do this hard thing, right? But in this game, like in a lot of Superman games, it's like, oh, but you're depowered, you're the kryptonite, whatever dumb thing you said earlier. I didn't even realize that that's what was supposed to be happening, but of course you're depowered. But it's like, then can you like give me a little bit of a ramp into that? Like, can there be one level where you explain to me how I'm becoming depowered and what the ramifications of that are? Like, Superman, you're now vulnerable to bullets. And it's like, oh, okay, so now I need to avoid combat because I can die. It's like, Superman, your super speed has been reduced. Like, oh, okay, so now things can happen on a schedule because I can't instantly travel infinite distance, right? Like, give me some way to understand that the character I'm seeing, right, is not actually capable of doing all of the things that I would expect to be able to do if I'm controlling that character. I'd forgotten the phrase ludonarrative dissonance, but you are 1,000% correct. That is exactly what is happening, right? You see, the big blue Boy Scout, you expect to be able to do anything, right? I mean, within reason. I know it's a video game, but like, you expect to be able to do super many things. And the fact that they immediately start you disempowered and don't like explain any of that or anything is just like, oh, so I'm just playing regular the video game, and it's just got Superman paint on it.
Yeah, no, it very much so feels that way. And again, there's just so many cool little things that they could have done to make this game, to make small challenges around, the issue, the core issues, right? But like, to your point where, he punches, right? And it's like, womp, womp. It's like, what if there was a situation, right, where, you had to, for whatever reason, do like your ranged attack. Maybe your ranged attack is like, yeah, you've got your heat vision, right? But you can also like throw a concussive punch, like that'd be cool. That'd be a cool Superman thing to do, and it just, that knocks people down. Like, you use your heat vision on inanimate stuff, but you can't, it's like a rock, paper, scissors, right? Like there's, so I feel that, again, comparing it to the new Spider-Man games is not there, but there was stuff here. You just make it a series basically of mini games, right? Each one kind of like tests one of Superman's powers. So the cycle time is the one other big note that I have. It's bizarre. At first I said like it's awful, because literally you fly through all of those hoops, right? And then it says you've got 6 seconds to now stop this car. It's like, oh my God. And so then I went and failed. Of course I did, because I can't think that quickly. And it kicked me back to the beginning of the ring. And that was literally a hard exit point for me. I put it down for the evening. I said, okay. And then just, I was done for and then I came back and played some more, but it only because of this. Like, otherwise I would have been like, no, we're good. But why would you kick me back that far? It makes no sense. Like, and then, so then after that you hit a checkpoint, then it's a whole bunch more rings, and then it's pick up this cop car and put it down at the end of the road, right? So again, not clear. It doesn't tell you how to do any of those things. It just tells you to do it, and then immediately rocket launchers the cop car to death, right? And kicks you back to the beginning of the rings. So I went through it all again, and then I just went and ran into the car, and I was like, okay, good, that picked it up. But then I got to the end of the thing, and I didn't know I was just supposed to fly through the little goalpost. I thought I was supposed to put it down because it told me to put it down. So I chucked this car and all of the police officers to their death. And I'm like, well, that was interesting. And then just got kicked back to the beginning of the rings again. I was like, oh my God. But the really bizarre thing is that there were times when I wasn't kicked back to the ring section. Sometimes I was just kicked back to that new challenge, and I couldn't find rhyme or reason to it. And that blows my mind. This game is so not game. It is so unpredictable that I can't even like deconstruct. I can't say like it has a good cycle time. My thing. I can't tell you whether or not this game has a good or bad cycle time. I am Superman in Lex Luthor's. This is Lex Luthor's like VR thing, and I am being depowered by the kryptonite because my one superpower of like harping on cycle time, I can't use it. I'm just flailing around.
I mean, yes, just I had a lot to say about cycle time because of how broken it is. Confusing is, I think, the better word, and there's very little I could say that wouldn't be repeating everything you just said, because the confusion aspect of it is what I actually found most personally frustrating. The fact that it's like, oh, go back and do this, right? Because that's always my complaint is, will redoing this thing help me get better at the thing I failed at? And if the answer is no, then what is the purpose of that longer cycle time? And sometimes the answer is you need to calm down. Like you won't be successful if you just throw yourself against this challenge again, right? So it's like you need a second to like regroup as a player. And so there are reasons that one might have a longer cycle time, but generally speaking, you want between here and where I failed, you want to let the player practice the thing they failed at in a safe environment or under different circumstances, or get information they missed or whatever, right? So that they have even if it's just like you can do it if you have more health. You can take 10 hits, but you took 5 hits when you went through there. So if you just make it all the way there with full health, like that's not the ideal way to get through this problem, but you will at least get through this problem, right? So there's a cornucopia of reasons you might have a longer cycle time, and this game executes on none of them. And the fact that it then executes on inconsistency, where I feel like most of the time you're thrown back to before the challenge and you have to do the rings, but not every time. And
right.
If you really want to piss yourself off, you do what I did, which is, and I did this only for research purposes, but I paused the game and I was just, because I just died again. I was just like, hey, wait, one of these options is restart mission. I wonder, will that send me back to the checkpoint or will it send me back to the start of the level? And I only did one experiment, so this is an anecdote, but it in fact sent me back to the beginning of the level. So,
I mean, to be fair, when you run an experiment and it kills everyone in the experiment, you don't rerun that one. You just kind of say, you don't need to do replicate studies on this one. That was fine.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe there's like a mid-level checkpoint, and if you said restart, it would send you back there. I don't think so. I think it's a full-on level reset. But the fact that each level has a crap load of checkpoints and they're inconsistently distributed and enforced, and I don't know of any, at least not in the first level or what I played of the second level, I don't know of any reason you would ever choose to restart the mission. It's not like you're collecting Riddler trophies. It's not, you don't have a score. You don't have lives, right? That's one thing this game actually got right, is you don't have lives. You can just bang your head against this kryptonite wall as much as you want to, right? The game will let you play it until you die of a stroke because you don't have lives. There's no continues. So good job on that front, because at least they realized this game has broken cycle time. It has broken objectives. It has broken controls. Everything about this is horrible. If anyone has any chance of getting good enough to make it to the end, we have to just let them bang their head against this as long as they want. So thumbs up on that choice.
I think like just somebody somewhere said, you know what? Nobody stopped playing this because they ran out of lives. You know, like they may have started, you know, like they started with 3 lives and all of a sudden they like nobody's like, oh, I ran out of lives. I guess I'm done playing. People stopped playing before that. Here's the thing. Okay. This is also an anecdote, but just to melt both of our minds briefly. Yes, the cycle time is wildly inconsistent. I swear there was a time, and I forgot where exactly it happened, where I failed an objective and it kicked me back to the beginning of the ring of that part, right? And then I went through again and I failed the objective again and it did not kick me back to the beginning of the rings. Yeah. No, I think it was with the cop car setting it down, right? Because where you have to set it down, right? Is that one time it kicked me back to the beginning of the rings, which frustrated me. But then another time it just let me restart with the cop car.
I mean, in most games, I would be like, nah, you're just misremembering. But like in this, maybe.
Who knows, right? I mean, and like I said, I was like, did that happen? And again, it must have been the kryptonite fog just seeping into my brain. It was like, you know, yes, it's all true and it's all false. I don't know, man. But again, it's just at a minimum, whether or not the question isn't whether or not I'm right. The problem is, as you so aptly put it, is that sounds plausible, right? Is that the cycle time is so wildly inconsistent. The fact that it is internally inconsistent sounds reasonable, you know? So if it's like, if all of a sudden, you know, I came to you and said, hey, our patron John is actually John Johns and is the Martian Manhunter, you would say, probably not, you know, like that doesn't sound right, right? But if we knew John, our patron, well enough that you were like, I don't know, man, he could be a Martian, right? Then there's probably other issues. And thank you, John, very much for patroning our show. But you know, like it's the plausibility is the problem.
Yeah. I have this one last note that I think starts to sum up my feelings. You got any other hard hitters?
The only other thing that I would say, and we kind of touched on a little bit in cycle time, but it's kind of a throwaway, is that we talked about this a little bit in Doom, which is that Doom is a series of vignettes, right? It's you go from battle to battle to battle. But there's a very important thing, which is that you go from a battle to a battle to a battle. There is, and we kind of said it, is that the rock music cuts out and then there's a checkpoint and then you breathe for a minute, right? And then you go and you walk around and then all of a sudden an imp throws a fireball at you and all of a sudden it's right, you know, and then you're back in it, right? This game doesn't have that. There's no bridge. It's just immediately like, fly through all the hoops. Now do this other thing. Now do this other thing. And it's all at breakneck speed and breakneck pace. And the fact that there is no fly to the next mission or whatever, there's no bridge between the vignettes is equally jarring and incredibly problematic. And I don't think I've seen a game do something like that before.
Well, and you don't realize it, but that sundae you just ordered has a second equally sad sundae upside down on top of it. Because
can I send it back?
No. Because in the second level, which is happening in an interior space, it's the opposite. There's no time. There's no like timer counting down. There's no challenge you have to go do at breakneck speed. It's walk around the empty featureless sewers. And like once you defeat the couple of robot enemies, like I was trying to, you have to open this door and you have to get a key to go and open put it in the computer to make it, you know, open the blast bay doors sort of thing. And it's so jarringly opposite to have like 2 to 3 minutes, right? If you played through the whole first level properly, it'd probably take you a few minutes, right? So to have level 1 with no tutorial be nonstop, oh my God, you're going to fail a million times. And then have level 2 be walking down a hallway, get on this elevator to go to a lower floor. Like it's just but then that whole level, admittedly, I didn't get to the end of that level, but that whole level happens at that pace, right? And I guarantee you there are later levels that are done like the first level. So they kind of did a similar vignette thing of this is fast paced, this is slow paced, except the too much fast paced and then too much slow paced, right? Like it's not rhythmic, it's blaring music that is then awkwardly stopped in the middle of a song, and then there's complete silence, like the vacuum of space, and then blaring music again.
So the one thing, and then I'll let you transition, is so, and this just again just shows how much they missed on the core aesthetic of fantasy, right? Is that I could believe Batman, right, skulking around in the sewers in order to properly prepare an area in order for him to be able to get intel, to suss out whatever, right? Because Batman does whatever needs to be done in order for him to basically swing way above his weight class, right? He is the only non-powered human in the Justice League, right? And everyone in the Justice League is like, I wouldn't want to mess with him. It's like, that's how much legwork he does beforehand, right? So I could see that in a Batman game. This skulking around in the sewers sound like a Superman thing to do. Superman doesn't do that. He just, bursts in and then just kind of deals with it because he's bulletproof and everything proof, So again, it's just a complete miss on like, I want to be Superman. Cool. Skulk around in the sewers and find keys to a door I can't just open. Let me go ahead.
No, this is my last controls and mechanics comment is they do in the second level my favorite hand wavy, the writers or the director looking directly into the camera in the movie and just being like, please suspend your disbelief about this because that's not what this thing is about. This game, you're playing a depowered Superman because you're always playing a depowered Superman, right? And in the second level, after you go down this like hallway, you explode a couple of robots, and then there's a character I actually didn't recognize, and I don't know if it's because I just didn't know who it was or if it's because it was a made up character for this game or the low poly model or whatever, but I think it's a woman, and she says to you, you can't just go smashing through doors down here, Superman, because we've wired bombs all over, and so you're gonna have to, right? She basically says, we have taken away what we know is your main advantage, which is that doors do not stop you, right? And I was like, thank you for showing me that you thought about how stupid it is for Superman to have to unlock a door regardless of what it's made out of. Even if it was a kryptonite door, he could open it. It would just really hurt him, right? So that's dumb.
Yeah, no, yeah. And when you say like, even if it is a kryptonite door, it's like, that's what they make giant pieces of concrete for.
Yeah. Throw it through the kryptonite door. Use your heat vision, right? Use your breath, right? Do something. But the fact that they put the Superman, we have set things up in such a way that you do not have all of your tools available to you line at the early part of the second level, as opposed to, the opening of the game, is just like, you obviously thought about this, right? You obviously thought about this because you threw in the single line of dialogue, but why the hell is it 1,000 deaths and one whole level into the game before someone says to me, hey, you're not going to be able to do everything Superman would do for this stupid reason. Suspend your disbelief, right? I'm all for that. Fine. Give me the stupid, here's the reason for suspending your disbelief, right? Superman has been thrown into a dimension where he's in the Feywild, right? Everything is magical and magic can hurt Superman, so he's not immortal here, right? That's fine. Like, but tell me that up front. Otherwise, I see the cape and I expect to be controlling God. So that segues me into how I feel like this game held up, which is it didn't, because it was never good. And here, I'm going to do something that I'm not sure we have done yet since we started the after show, which is I'm going to do a short after show with you because we both have to go. I want to do a short after show with you to talk to you about the one and only good Superman game I've ever played. And I think that maybe you've ever played. I was afraid you were going to remember that we played this game during the course of the show, and I'm super glad that you didn't, because then we get to talk about it. So if you don't have the after show because you're not a patron, here's a great reason for you to become one. But I will link to the game in the show notes. So if you want to hear our discussion about it, you got to get the after show. If you just want to play the game, because I think people should play this game, it will be linked in the show notes. I literally went and put it in the show notes before we started recording. This game didn't hold up. It can't have held up. It was terrible when they released it. It's terrible today. If you somehow have nostalgia goggles for this game, it's because the same set of unfortunate circumstances that made this game so terrible, the opposite was happening in your life, and you were the right age or the right games literacy, or you played it under the right circumstances or whatever, that you enjoyed it. And God bless you for having those memories. Please do not ruin those memories for yourself by putting your hands on a Nintendo 64 controller and trying to play this game again. It will ruin your memories of it, right? And I think it's stupid to say like, oh, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ruined my childhood. No, it didn't. You still have your memories of the original one. If you go back and you play this game and somehow you remember it fondly because of your thick nostalgia goggles, it will harsh those memories. So just leave it back there. If you've never played it, now you don't have to, because we did the thing. We did the game reviewer thing, and we have now reviewed this game. So full nostalgia goggles required. Shock to no one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agreed. Well, I mean, what would you even do if I said, no, I don't think this requires any nostalgia goggles at all? And just
this would be our last episode.
I was gonna say, yeah, right, because it'd be. I mean, I'd have lost all credibility, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess we're done with this hobby. No, obviously, full nostalgia goggles required. This game is chaotic evil. It is no fun to play, and it is very incredibly poorly put together. It is an exemplar of everything you don't want to do in a game. It does not even come close to being able to cover the check that it wrote on the cover of, like, hey, you want to play as Superman? It's like, yes. I would like to know when that gets to happen, because it sure as hell didn't happen in this game. So yeah, no, basically by the time that I was ready to record this episode for this particular game, I was done and could never be undone.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you've lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. The end of it all, gamers play what we play, not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We both know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure already in sight, you're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for